Hey there, boys and girls. We're fast this week. Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollywood Weekly. Nick George here to talk about the greatest show on earth,
Whoa.
BBC Dracula.
That fresh piece of IP, Dracula.
Yeah, never rotten,
Right. Exactly.
never decaying.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't often do TV series. We should probably change that a little bit because I think more and more
Twin Peaks was the biggest one we did.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, when you look at things like The Outsider and you know, Castle
Into the
Rock and
fucking
Black
World
Mirror,
season 2.
right? I mean, I feel like a lot of the best work, some of the stuff I'm most excited about when I look down the schedule of what's coming in cinema compared to TV, I'm actually a little bit more excited about TV for like the first part of 2020, right? So
I think it might be the whole thing, to be honest. Like, there's like a handful of like films coming out this year.
This one is particular for us because we are so honestly baffled by the reaction to BBC Dracula. Because cards on the table, we both love it. Not that we think it's perfect, but we love it. And it seems like the vast majority of the internet hates it.
It's 56% audience
With
rating
like
on
a
Tomatoes.
white hot passion, right? So, I mean, I was telling you right before we were recording that I Googled BBC Dracula on Twitter, and the first thing that came up was worst hour and a half of television of my life, right? So, I mean, there were people who really...
life?
He was just born, it's fine. So, but here's the thing, like, we were like, we want to kind of think this through out loud and see if we can figure out what the hell is going on, because we're so different from what's happening out there with the reaction to this show.
Polar opposite.
Right, totally opposite. But here's what I want to just, let me give you like where I'm coming from in 30 seconds, right?
Gotcha.
So basically, the way I'm looking at this is, if you put it in horror context, because every review or comment I saw was dealing with the show in and of itself. And that's fine. That's fair. That's probably the best way to review things, right? But we're horror fans doing a horror podcast. So in the context of horror, I started thinking about what do you people want? Like, what do we want collectively, right? Mm-hmm. So do we want Pet Sematary remake, where it's completely dull and unimaginative, where you change almost nothing? You're just like modernizing it, right?
Right.
Or do we want it Chapter 1 and 2 remake, where you make a couple changes where you need to, right? And then you make it really polished and pro and basically tell the same story but with updated effects or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or option 3, do you want a radically different approach that takes a lot of chances, is super creative and like whatever? So I feel like if you present it in the abstract, horror fans would be like, option 3, please. But then when you give it to them, they're like, fuck you, please. Right? And you're like, what's going on here? This kind of doesn't make any sense. So
I didn't order sausage.
So then I'm looking at it, and then I realized, well, a lot of the reviews I'm seeing aren't horror people, right? So maybe that was a big part of, they're just taking it as a piece of content, like they're Sherlock watchers, so they don't even know what to make of this in context of horror, right?
Right.
But in the context of horror, I think this is an amazing production. On its own, I think it's amazing, and I'll get to that. But in the context, I just wanted to point out there's only so many ways you can do this. And I feel like this is the bravest. Mm-hmm. So what the hell, right? But on top of that, this is the thing that popped into my head as a metaphor, right? I have problems with some of the stuff this show did. I actually hate the 2 Van Helsings. There's a lot of spoilers in this
hate
episode,
them?
by the way. I hate that there were 2. I think there should have been just 1.
No,
right? So I know. Everyone's
riff starts.
Right, everyone's gonna have their own things. Well, just stick up in that because I'm almost done.
Okay.
So like, and I dislike honestly a couple of the things, like we were talking before about the overuse of the I never drink pause wine line, and stuff like that. So do I think it's perfect? No. There were some things that actually were really distracting that I didn't like about it. Overall, I loved it, but there were some distracting things. So then I realized, but it's also this amazing, it's the only thing that gave me, it's the only thing even remotely recently that gave me that same thrill that Lost Boys or maybe the good parts of Interview with the Vampire did, because the implications of what Dracula and vampires represent are the scariest thing about Dracula. Like Lost Boys, you're a teenager forever, mm-hmm. right? And it's terrifying that you're stuck as a teenager, but you have a 500-year-old mind, or you're just going on and on and on. And this does that so so well, right? So then I was like, here's my analogy for this, and then I'm done. This is my analogy for this production. They took the exam and they got a B. The exam is a B. And then they were given an extra credit question. And they gave the greatest answer to the extra credit question you could ever give on an exam in the history of time. They gave the kind of answer that the teacher will remember on his deathbed, that it'll tell other teachers about 10 years from now. So did they nail the exam? Almost. But then the extra thing, the piece that makes this special and different than what other people do, is the most amazing thing about it that nobody's talking about. My rant over.
Man, that was a good rant. I wish I had a rant ready. Like, I just want to like channel like Stephen A. and be like, the BBC Dracula is the LeBron James
You rolled the R. That was good.
of horror
I
television.
didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either until just now. That's crazy.
Well, tell me what you loved about it, or argue back on the things.
Well,
that I
real
don't like,
quick,
but
one other thing.
Yes.
Oh, I had a skit that I wanted to do. I wanted to. I'll do this at the end because before me and George were recording this, he had sent me a link of Roger Ebert and Martin Scorsese. How did he say it? I always said Scorsese, but he said it like
Scorsese, right?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. I don't know, but I learned something new. I wanted to give Dracula my Martin Scorsese review of Dracula. He goes, it's a great picture. Dracula, it's told in an unconventional way.
I can hear how he would do it.
It's an unconventional way they get about Dracula dealing with his mortality or lack thereof.
That's perfect. That's exactly what
That's exactly what. I feel like I watched them do their top 10 films of the 90s, and I know exactly what he's. Yeah, now I can chill him. No, honestly, like you had mentioned. Like the reviews weren't that great and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. Then you watched it and you were like, okay, this is the good. Like you got to watch it.
Yeah, the online take on this is the aggregate is first episode really good, second episode meh, third episode terrible, ruined the whole thing. That's the online take for this.
Awful take. Good job, none of you.
What was Scorsese think of that thing?
The third episode. I tell you.
I'll tell you.
So no, like one of my favorite films is Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yes.
Right, and I still think Bram Stoker's Dracula did some things better, like the costume, some of the effects, like when Gary Oldman's like the bat human form, and then the score.
Yes.
But everything else, I think this Dracula did better.
See, that's amazing because when we first met and discovered that we really shared a passion for horror, and I was asking you your top movies, the first two you blurted out were Sleepy Hollow and Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like Bram Stoker's Dracula is a big movie for you.
That's a big movie.
And the fact that anything could even get close to it is remarkable.
And it wasn't like sometimes like when Mads Mikkelsen was like crushing his Hannibal, and people started going like, oh, I think like he rivals in a different way. He rivals Anthony Hopkins. He made it his own thing, and it's unique and it's fresh, and you know I think it's probably equal to that.
Totally.
Like I was a little like sad. I was like, but no, Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal. Like you can't do that. Get away.
Right.
But with this one, that Dracula, I fucking loved him from the get.
Yep.
I thought everything about him. He was charming. Here's my thing with Dracula. Like, and honestly, it's probably my thing with a lot of the Universal monsters. A lot of them just aren't scary.
Yes.
Frankenstein's not scary. The Mummy's not scary.
Well,
Invisible Man's not scary.
But
They were, but I didn't have the pleasure
that,
of being born before they cured polio, so I don't know what that's like.
Polio might be coming back.
Yeah, goddamn it.
I heard there. Okay.
Goddamn it. But like this one made Dracula scary again, but not only that, it made him charming. It made him smart.
Fun.
It gave him a lot of charisma.
Yep.
I loved how. You know, he even mentions it in the show. He's a 500-year-old warlord.
Yep.
And some of the tactics he was doing to screw over people were like, you know, general. Like he was thinking 10 steps ahead of them of what he was going to do.
Well, let's do this for a second because that was the complaint of many of the reviewers I saw, which was we're so sick of people have to be the smartest person in the room, a la Hannibal Lecter and a la, you know, like Sherlock from the series. And they didn't like that Dracula, I mean, literally I saw a tweet was, yawn, oh, he's the smartest person in the room. Okay, we get it. That's how you guys always write these shows. And so I sort of get that as if you get tired of a trope and then you feel like you're seeing it again, right? But my counter to that be like, what do you want them to do? if a person's smart enough to rise to be the warlord of a country and then keep that job, then right, which was not you. If you're Genghis Khan level smart, right, and then you have 500 more years to get smarter and accumulate information, and then you come up against a nun who's lived like a third of a human life, like of course he's going to outsmart, or at least it's not. This is ridiculous. What do you want from these people?
But more importantly, what a disservice they're doing to the character, and especially this rendition of Abraham Van Helsing,
right?
Because her whole thing is that Dracula, he should always outsmart her. He's 500 fucking years old. Right. He learns,
and he doesn't, by the way.
And he learns.
He doesn't always outsmart her, but he does.
That's exactly my point.
Right?
Is because that's what makes that Van Helsing, in my opinion, stronger than Anthony Hopkins, which is funny because he's both of his characters in this episode of
weird
Hannibal and Van Helsing. Yeah. I think that is why I really fell in love with this Van Helsing, is because Dracula should absolutely outsmart her every single fucking step of the way. Mm-hmm. He's been around long. He obtains other people's information when he drinks their blood. He should be the smartest. He should be the quickest.
Right,
but
if Van Helsing takes Dracula down, then it should be a remarkable achievement, and it wouldn't be if he was an idiot.
But more importantly is when it comes to like one of the themes they tackle of the devil and the god and spirituality, what makes Van Helsing so strong is that the guy who should be smart is not, because she strongly believes in her faith, and that will always be better than selling your soul to the devil, and that is so fucking powerful. And for some motherfucker to be like, Eon, he probably wiped the drool off his mouth and tightened up his fucking helmet and then hit send tweet. Fucking nerd.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed. But so and here's the thing, like you can have like individual things about the baffling thing to me about this is that if you could, so there's an amazing scene in the movie The Cell, if you remember, which we did that. Where there's a horse and then these like glass slides come down and segment the horse and spread apart, and then you got slices, right? Mm-hmm. If you could do that to this production and look at the slices, look at the music and the acting and the atmosphere and the scare factor and the philosophy and like whatever, and you looked at them all individually and took them out and anonymized them, like sample A, sample B, and handed them over to people, they're all excellent. Right. But when you put them back together and then you label it BBC Dracula, people are like, this sucks. You're like, wait, what's happening? This doesn't make any sense, because all of the individual components are amazing. Mm-hmm. So how is this happening? And I think I want to throw out a theory that I can't even fully explain, but just I think we're all in a trap that we're not realizing yet. Right. And I think
kind of like episode 2.
I think we're going to realize later the trap that we were in. So the trap is basically this: nothing is going to satisfy us anymore. Right. Because these things are going to look a little too polished. They're going to be a little aggravating because when they punch certain points that aggravate you, they're going to do it in a way that's more colorful. It's in better high def. It's louder. It's so like you're going to feel more aggravated because the things that you don't like let me reverse engineer this argument. When you were watching a terrible movie in the 80s, if you grew up at that time, if you're an 80s horror fan, right? A lot of times you were watching them in really crappy visual quality, which masked some of the problems. Mm-hmm. And all of that kind of thing is gone, right? So now when you're looking at it, you're looking at every individual pixel and every like thing, and everyone's getting hyper aggravated by certain things, especially since especially if you're dealing with a story that's been retold so many times, and you're comparing it in your head to previous things that had the benefit of that, and the newer things won't. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I had that same experience actually when I was watching It Chapter 2, which I think is pretty good. Not as good as Chapter 1, but I thought the way they dealt with Pennywise in Chapter 2, I thought was excellent. Right. But there were scenes where he was rolling one eye sideways, or Pennywise was rolling his eyes back in his head or whatever, and they looked ridiculous to me. And it's weird because they shouldn't, because they were really well done, mm-hmm. right? But like Bruce in Jaws looks better than that, but it's only because I can't see a lot of Bruce in Jaws in that one shot, where you can see everything in this kind of shot, right? So I feel like that's sort of a little bit what's going on, is people are just more easily hyper aggravated by individual elements of things, and they're watching them with one eye on, their watch and their phone and their thing, and like the
That's what I was
distraction,
gonna
and
say.
they're not in the flow, they're not immersed in it. And what I believe is, if this Dracula had come out in the 70s, done the way it was, but shot 70s style, and it was
Brian De
standing
Palma's
alongside, but it was standing alongside like the Jack Palance Dracula and the Frank Langella Dracula and all that stuff, this would be legendary. Right. So now
I agree.
you got something that would have been legendary if it had been dropped in a different era. When
It
now
still
it drops now,
is
and people are
legendary.
to
People
us,
just haven't came.
So I don't know if
around.
that makes sense, but that's
I see what you're saying, and like it's weird. Like even with that argument, like I still don't see what problems they have with this Dracula. Like it was the scariest. I'll say this, like maybe the cinematography wasn't like the best at all times. Like I don't think it was shot as well as like some of the Sherlock seasons. Right. But like it didn't need to be, because we had one of the best on-screen Draculas of all fucking time.
Yeah, look, can we talk about that for a second? So the two central performances in this show are amazing, right? So Van Helsing and Dracula are both incredible, but I just want to, like, because we're doing these meta arguments and outside arguments and arguing with reviewers, but it's going to rob the show of some of its credit if we don't just talk about the show. So talk about Dracula's performance for a second. Like, give me moments that you loved or stuff that he did that you thought was amazing. Like you were telling me about the Children of the Night thing, which I thought was incredible. So tell me, because I want people to get a taste, if they haven't seen it, a taste of some of what's amazing about it.
So like I liked when you first see him and he's really decrepit and he's just starting to drink some of the blood and rejuvenate.
Same as Bram Stoker.
Yeah. Same shit like that.
Yep.
But like, I just thought this Dracula, like I never found, and maybe it's because of the costume, like I never found Gary Oldman's Dracula charming.
Well, that was the biggest flaw of that movie, is it's not scary at all.
It's not scary, and he's not that charming.
No,
to be honest, it's those stupid.
The best thing about
glasses.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is not Gary Oldman's performance.
No, he's great in it, but it's
Right.
not the best.
Coppola is the best thing about Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh yeah, hands down.
Right.
and the costumes.
Right. Which he picked. Right?
Those things steal the goddamn show. No, but like when we were watching this, like, it's always really hard, like when you get an iconic character and someone else fills in the shoes. Because whenever you think of Dracula, you're almost 100% of the time you're going to think of Bela Lugosi, and then second you're going to go to Christopher Lee, and I think even maybe third you go to Max Shriek or whatever.
Shrek. Yep.
Like the fucking
Shriek would have been
movie. Shriek would have been better.
Yeah.
But now he's named after an ogre. But so those are really hard shoes to follow, and you have to be like LeBron James level, like across the board great at everything. And I really feel like he gave me a sense of like I wanted him to be on his side, but I could never trust him.
Yep.
But then he's gonna crack a joke and make me laugh, and while I'm laughing, he slices my throat.
Yep.
And I never really got that vibe from Bella. Christopher Lee, I just felt like he was going to rip my head off at any moment.
Right. Well, yeah, and a lot of them are like that. They're very, like with the Jack Palance Dracula that we watched, he was basically just a snarling animal.
He was angry all the time.
Like he was the Frankenstein Dracula, because he just grunted and came at you, right? So
exactly. This guy had patience.
Yep.
Which Dracula has nothing but time.
Well, here's the thing. So this is the thing that I think is really, really special. And I don't know how much of it's in the writing compared to how much of it's in the performance. I'm hoping it's equal, because that's, that would be amazing, because that means we're dealing with multiple talents there. But this Dracula is super curious. And I never got curiosity vibes from any of the other Dracula performances.
Right.
The other Draculas were manipulators and chess players, or they were just demonic, or they were whatever. Like Christopher Lee is not trying to figure out what makes people tick. He's trying to figure out how to open their throats.
Right.
This Dracula was authentically intrigued by one of the best moments, and one of the reasons everyone who says episode 3 is terrible is wrong, is one of the best moments in the whole series is when Dracula lands in that shithole apartment flat in London.
Oh, I love that.
And the woman, he wakes up, or she wakes up because she hears him, or I forget what the sequence is, but he's already killed her husband and folded him into a standing refrigerator that's way too small to fit a human. And then he's just sitting there watching the sunrise on Disney Plus on TV or whatever he's watching, right? And because he can't experience the sunrise for real, and he's watching on the TV, and you can see he's almost crying. Like, he's so moved by the fact that it's the first time he's seeing the sun in 400 years or whatever. But he turns to the woman who's renting the flat, and he goes, "Where are your servants? Are they do they have the day off? Like, you must be fabulously wealthy with all of these amazing devices." He's like, I've killed kings and queens and walked among the wealthiest, the Habsburgs and the, Anastasia and all that. And none of them have ever seen anything as marvelous as this room. And the woman's looking around like honestly confused at her 1-bedroom apartment. She's like, it's a dump.
Right.
Right. Like, whatever. But he's so intrigued by what we're doing as humanity to advance, even though it looks small to him, but it also looks amazing to him. It's a weird, like, how it goes. But that perspective, that curiosity is totally unique to this performance and creation.
Right.
And to have something so cool that's so new in a character that's so old, and then have everyone online shitting on it, it's just so weird.
I'm also like, and I'll be honest, like, I'm a sucker for romance. Like, I love
that's why you like Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Well,
it's one of the most romantic
versions of it. I love my romance movies. I love my rom-coms.
Yep.
But I did enjoy the fact that they did not make this Dracula a sad boy.
Right.
In all the other films, he's like, oh, is
Past.
that your Mina? She looks just like blah 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 from 1800s.
Yep.
They didn't do that. Like, they sort of looked at Mina, but he used Mina as
Mina didn't mean any more to him than the other. It was all about him. He was very narcissistic. He was like, this was my best bride. This is my best creation. He's looking at them as creations. He's trying to get to an end point. And the weird thing is, it's an analogy for a writer trying to write a masterpiece. So it's clearly the writers are thinking of themselves narcissistically, which normally would annoy me, but it's perfect for this, right? Like I picked up the metaphor, and I should have been annoyed, but I was like, wait, it's perfect for this.
Yeah, I like the fact that, like, he wasn't motivated by some old fling, like, because he's fucking Dracula.
Right.
Like, what's he need? Like, he can get 1,000 other brides.
Right.
He wants world domination.
Right.
I want my Dracula's goal to be clear, just like this one.
Yes.
And he even said something along the lines of, like, I'm going to go to the New World and kill, like, all of your people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bother you.
Yeah.
you.
And when he was trying to kill Van Helsing, and he thought he was going to consume her at the time, spoiler, he told her, "You're going to travel to the New World in my veins."
Right.
Like, that's so interesting, right? What the hell? Like, because everyone he eats is a part of him. It's like when Freddy Krueger has all the faces that are bubbling out of him in 4 or 5. I forget which one that happened in, like, whatever. But that's the thing, is it had sort of that vibe, and all of that is amazing. But so back up a second, because we're a horror podcast. We're horror fans. I want to deal with how scary this is. So I know that there's a ton of horror fans out there who are super jaded, and all they watch is horror, and it's hard to keep your imagination going. So they're like, nothing scares me, and like whatever, which I hate. But
there is something that scares them. When their mom ain't got no Hot Pockets in the freezer.
Right. Well, regardless, the thing is that if you just let your imagination open up a little bit watching this is a terrifying production of Dracula. And I want to give you an example, and then I want you to give me an example back, because I know you'll come up with something. Because the Children of the Night one, I think, is the one you're going to tell me. Great. But mine is, there. First of all, the second episode, Blood Vessel, is set on the ship, the Demeter, that's coming back, and no one else has ever told that story in any detail.
I love that. I'm glad
every other
they
Dracula glosses that in like a 3-minute segment, and then it's over.
The ship arrives. There's someone tied to the
wolves jump off of it. Plague spreads
out.
There's
a hole in the fucking sail.
Totally right. That's how it always is, right?
Yeah.
But in this one, we spend time on the ship, almost like murder mystery style.
Yes.
And the thing is, I actually really disliked. Remember, we were talking about. I really disliked the Room 9 conceit. I think that was my least favorite thing about the entire series. It was overplayed. The reveal was visually ridiculous when the camera rose up in the 9 shape. That was all kind of bullshit. Who was in the room was interesting, but the way it was presented was way overly clever, which is whatever. But the point is there's this. So first of all, whoever he eats, he sort of gets their skills or talents or memories or whatever, right? So he's trying to have a conversation with this German Duchess, and he realizes his German's rusty. So he excuses himself, wanders the ship, finds a German person, eats him, and then comes back and then speaks perfect German, which is amazing. That's just objectively an incredible thing to do. But the moment when he's stalking this girl that he finds on the ship, and she's talking about how she's going to get married and she's going to have kids and she's going to have the perfect life and she's going to whatever. And he goes, "That's all sounds great too." But he's like, "That all sounds great. That would have been amazing." And she catches it. She goes, "Would have been? Like, why are you talking past tense?" And he's like, "Because I'm a vampire." And then he's going to kill her. But before he kills her, he shows her in this water, like a mirror. He shows her what could have been the life she's imagining. He plays it out for her. He's like, "You would have been an amazing wife. You would have been an amazing mother. You would have had an amazing kid. And I'm going to take it all from you forever right now." That is terrifying. There's no way for that to not be terrifying, right? That's like chilling. Yeah. I got to chill talking about it, right? So like, and there are other things, other movies way back to like M from 1931 all the way to now. There's horror moments where you realize the implications are something is forever, like, or not forever, but like something is so huge. Like when they stitched together Frankenstein and brought him to life, that shouldn't have happened. And now he's alive. He has to spend the rest of his life dealing with the fact that he's exists and he shouldn't. It's a mistake, right? So he's just forever stuck with a mistake. There's no way to rectify it. And this is reversed. Like he's erasing someone forever, right? And it's terrifying. So we're all, you're horror fans. This is the most terrifying iteration of Dracula in quite a while. Not only in the scenes themselves, but the implications of what they mean for the characters that are getting, and the atmosphere they're being displayed in. The part where the ship gets sunk and is going down sideways and the flames are coming out of it. There's these amazing shots that are just like chilling and incredible. So I don't get it. I don't like the single most, as being people who have run a horror podcast for years and years and years, the single biggest complaint we hear from horror fans is not scary. This is scary, and it's still getting no support. Makes no sense.
I totally forget when I had something so
Well,
good.
Oh shit!
No,
Sorry,
no, because that was great. That was great. No, it's gonna come back to me. It was Dracula giving the girls sucking her blood. He went away there.
That's not how things come back.
You were talking about. That's all comes back to me. I say it out loud. I sort of do like a little mini backtrack there. No, you were talking about how like it showed her how her life was gonna play out.
Yes.
What I loved about that is that they sort of showed you option A and option B. So option A was, this is how your life was going to play out. Right. Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to say. See, that worked. I know exactly what I'm going to say.
Good.
Put a pin in that. No other horror movie has made me question what I'm going to do in real life.
Oh, interesting.
Before. I always told Alex and I told my family, whenever I die, do not send me to Springfield, Ohio and bury me. I don't want my body in Springfield, Ohio. I'd rather die.
Right.
I've always told Alex that.
Right.
I said, I want to be cremated.
Yep.
And then when Dracula said...
oh, the cremation thing. You're right. Okay, tell me.
When he said, it hurts and, you're probably alive.
So for people who haven't seen it, there's a lot of tricky stuff in the series about what characters are. Yeah, but what characters are who. So like the characters from the novel, Lucy and Mina, whatever, there's a lot of trickery with who they are.
They're
how
still
they're
in
presented to you. They're in it, but they're
different
changed
places
and
in time.
Have sort of different relationships with each other a little bit and whatever.
Right.
So Lucy is getting turned into a vampire by Dracula, and she has decided in the modern day she wants to be cremated, and he knows he's turning her. So he knows she's going to rise from the grave, and he knows that when she's put into the cremation oven, she's going to be conscious. So he tells her, make sure you go back and change your arrangements. And she doesn't believe him and doesn't do it. So she gets cremated alive, and we see it. And
episode
it's,
3.
Again, terrifying.
Let's fight for episode 3.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah, because that was the one that got the most crap.
Episode, for some reason, here's what I think. I think if you're someone who, honestly, in your heart, hates episode 3, put your tongue back in your mouth and watch it again. Because you're wrong.
No, let's change their mind. So, well, I guess you can't even change our mind. All we can do is be passionate about what we're passionate about, because you're right. I was very skeptical. I told you before this came, like, I was like, I can't believe they're taking it modern times so fast. And I still believe it went too fast. I still think there should have been more. I feel like the weakest thing, I think both of us agree about this, is the weakest, not piece, but weakest thread to it is the actual ending, because it was too rushed.
It was,
right?
that was very,
way too
very
rushed.
quick.
And they couldn't fit in enough. I feel like two 1 hour and a half episodes was good enough in the time we had. There should have been 2 1.5 hour episodes in modern times. And it would have been perfect.
I agree with
but
that.
they tried to put too much in, so there was you couldn't quite get to caring about Lucy as much as you should. You couldn't quite believe that Dracula was getting taken out the way he was. You know, it was all too sudden. There just wasn't enough space for it. So I do agree that that's a flaw there, right? But
it makes up for the flaw by being one of the scariest episodes.
Right. So I was very skeptical of it and pretty clear-eyed about, like, whatever. And I was going into it expecting to hate it. And there was just no way to hate it, because everything that's great about this was magnified by the choice of bringing it into modern times.
Right.
The humor got better. I love that he guessed the Wi-Fi password in his jail cell. They had Dracula in a jail cell in the Jonathan Harker Institute, prison. And they were like, how'd you hook up to the Wi-Fi? He's like, well, the password's my name.
It's so stupid.
No, that was amazing.
No, I love it. It's
right.
stupid that the password.
No, it was stupid that he did it. It was amazing that he... And just the humor was like whatever, and then the fright went up with the killing. The two scariest things of the 3 scariest moments in the series to me are the children in the night scene, the showing the girl what her life would have been when taking it away scene, and then the cremation scene. 2 of the 3 are in the 3rd episode.
Yeah. And then everything they did with the undead and Dracula was scary, especially that first episode when he uncovers, like, the people, like, in the box, and they're, like, crammed in there, and then he's getting chased by
they unfold themselves out of the box like Pennywise did in It Chapter 1, in the Neibolt house, scene. And so that was kind of cool, right? But the scares went up in the modern time, the humor went up in the modern time. And I don't like what happened with Van Helsing. And I'm gonna spring something on you. I just want to see. I'm gonna bet you $1 million you can't tell me the name of Van Helsing 2. Agatha's Van Helsing 1.
Agatha's 1. Right. Well, I don't care because Agatha was my favorite.
Well, of course, but
I didn't really care about the second
part
one.
of my point that character was forgettable is there's no way you know her name off the top of your head.
No, but I do agree with you that if we had 2 episodes in the modern time and you had enough of the bouncing between Agatha and the new one, I would have cared for her more.
Yes.
I do agree with you on that.
Yep.
But no, like, so episode 3 had some of the scary moments. One, him stuffing the guy in the fridge was just awesome.
Yes.
I loved that. Them going to the death stuff always freaks me out. Like, when we went to the death museum, like, I was cool with everything except for, like, the funeral stuff.
Yep.
The funeral stuff wigged me out. Like, I hate it. It's always weird. Even when I went home for Christmas, my grandma passed away, and we were at we lived like 2 houses down from a funeral home.
Right.
And that's just always made me feel weird.
Totally.
So, like, that stuff's always gonna freak me out. But when they went to the cemetery, in fact, I'm glad they changed some of the lines, because we had mentioned how I don't drink wine comes up like 3 times in like the first 2 episodes. I loved how they repurposed.
And you always heard wah, wah, wah after he said it, and you're like, oh, God. But that was the only time they did that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so then instead of having, the wolves howling.
Listen to them, the children of the night, what music they make.
Having it switch from being like wolves outside to being people undead buried underground is the scariest.
Yeah.
Like it's weird because, like, it's unsettling, but it's also like a little hokey, like a little haunted mansion-y.
Totally.
But, like, that works.
It's perfect.
It's works.
Perfect for it, because you can't do that all grim and like whatever. And that's the thing is, I detected a little bit of "Let the Right One In, Let Me in this production, and that to me is amazing that it had a little of that DNA in it, a little of that look in it, right? Like when Lucy was getting cremated, because there's a scene where a major character in Let the Right One In and Let Me In goes up in flames, and it was filmed a little bit like that, right? So, like, the fact that because the premise, think about how genius this is, okay? And here I get it. The writers think they're clever. Mark Gatiss is an incredible horror historian, so like I give him credit for being clever, but the charge against them is they're way too clever and they make everything, way too clever, right? So I get the charge, but this is just authentically so genius, right? The idea of Dracula is he eats stuff and that DNA goes forward with him and he gets more skills and more talent. As a matter of fact, one of the amazing things about the reveals about the second episode is that Dracula picked the passengers on the ship for individual skills so he could eat them and get them so he'd be ready when he landed in London. Mm-hmm. So he's got like an accountant and a fighter and because he's like, I want all those skills when I get there, right? Which is just incredible, right? But the idea is you take the best of what's before, you consume it, and now it's yours and you use it for your own purposes. Which is exactly what any creator does. They take a look at the past movies and TV shows and go, that was amazing, I'll steal that. That was amazing, I'll steal that. And they go on. So they took a little of Let the Right One In, and they took a little Nosferatu, and they were doing what Dracula was doing.
You know why? They're vampires.
That's possible.
That's the only answer. No, the other thing that I really like.
We'll know when their funeral hits. If they're cremated, they're not vampires.
No. Well, two things.
Yes.
One, I got to finish why episode 2 is so scary. One, listening to them underground, and the fact that he started giving statistics. He's like 1 in like every 10 people are just gonna be rotting underground for the rest of their lives. Conscious, rotting.
Because most undead in this show's theory are the Nosferatu type of undead. They're just snarling, kind of. They're even weaker than Nosferatu.
Yeah,
and Dracula is like the advanced form of undead.
Yeah. Second, the Blue Fur Lady.
Yes. Amazing.
How fucking frightening was that?
Amazing.
An undead little kid wanting to play games with you is horrifying.
Amazing.
And he looked scary.
Yes.
And you also had like a little dead baby in the
And it was a little Creepshow vibe there with him peeking out from around the thing. I would expect him to be like, where's my cake?
Well, we don't want to talk about Creepshow. Especially if we're talking TV like this.
But agreed. But that was terrifying. And you're right, because but to the point I was making before, that moment when he brings Lucy to the cemetery and he goes, listen to that. Do you hear that? And she goes, no. And he puts her hand on the ground and he goes, listen. And you start hearing heartbeats and then voices being like, where are the lights? Let me out. Terrifying, right?
Which is funny because that's what the guy says in the Haunted Mansion. Let me out of here. Let me out of here.
Totally. And then the fact but if you look at how Claes was performing it, the guy was performing Dracula, he was genuinely fascinated by it. But the thing is, so here's the thing. Like, when you're someone who deals in extreme circumstances, like a fighter pilot or a surgeon or something, you end up getting dispassionate about it. A surgeon could just walk through a pile of limbs, like no problem. Like they're just raw material.
There's a guy on TikTok who takes cadavers and he goes, "This is a tendon right here."
Exactly. Like, they're just parts to them. They're just like you have to be that way to do that thing,
right?
And a lot of Draculas don't get that part right, but he would have to be that way. Like anyone who is that advanced and alive that long and existing that way, alive, quotes, air quotes, they would have to be that way, right? And there's this amazing moment where he's arguing with Van Helsing, and she goes, she goes, why were you wandering around the ship? And he's like, I love people. I love, talking to them and like whatever. And she goes, but you were killing them. Why were you killing them if you love them? And he's like, why do you pick flowers? And it was perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Like flowers are fascinating, but I don't care if I chop them off.
Exactly.
And that's how his stance is to us, is that some flowers are worth picking and most flowers are not. And like, that's how he sees us. And that sort of like distant interest is perfect for that character. This is a perfect rendition of that character.
And along the same lines of like picking life, like Dracula and the vampire mythos has always been about like immortality.
Yes.
But not a lot of them have really tackled about like what it means to be alive.
Right.
This one did.
Yes.
And whenever when he gave Lucy the option of like, hey, you can like be like one of us for like forever and ever, like
totally,
she became that. But then she regretted that shit immediately because that's not worth it. Having the fucking mortal life and living 80 and 90 years or something like that is a way better option than suffering. And don't even get me started on the shot. I'm getting myself started. Of her in the casket.
Yep.
I just thought that whole scene, I mean, that is honestly probably one of the most gut-wrenching scenes of people mourning the death of her daughter while she's screaming in the coffin, and they will never know. And actually, there was the line after they started burning her. The mom says something along the lines of like, "I can feel her, or I can hear her," and she's down there burning.
Right.
That is the scariest.
Right.
I mean, people always talk about, jump scares are cheap. I want my scares like this, that, other. That's the scariest thing I've ever seen. That was another thing.
Was this didn't rely on jump scares to be scary, and it is scary, and that's another horror fan complaint, and still no support. Again, I feel like this episode, the refrain of it is, and it's amazing here, and no support. So, but we also, because I know we're running long, so I just want to, we can't skip over, first of all, the amazing Dolly Wells, who played the dual Agatha and Zoe Van Helsing,
Zoe.
She was incredible.
From A to Z. That's why they
from A to Z. Without her, this show is not what it is, right? So she was incredible. The way she played it in the interrogation scene in the convent, the way she played it confronting Dracula at the border of the convent, the way she played it with all of that, the way she played it on the ship when she was weakening in body and spirit, but not mind. Her mind never wavered. She stayed as fiercely smart,
confident,
and condescending to Dracula. That's the thing. If you think back to Hannibal Lecter's performance, Hannibal Lecter. If you think back to Anthony Hopkins' performance in Coppola's Dracula, he's smart, and he's playing chess with Dracula. He's going to go here. We got to beat him here. We got to get here before he does. Well, so he's trying to outthink him in terms of moves, right? And he obviously has the knowledge of how vampires work and whatever.
And the resources.
Right. So he's a professor. He's Van Helsing. So it makes sense. But he's intimidated by Dracula still. This Van Helsing is not intimidated at all. He has nothing on her because she knows she's going to live forever with her God, right? She has no fear. She's completely fearless of him, right? So there's this amazing moment where she's making a trade for Mina's life to Dracula. Let Mina go, take me instead, right? Mm-hmm. And he says to her, Bad deal for you, because it's not going to be quick. I'm going to make you last.
Nobody rushes a nun or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And so, but he's threatening her. He's telling her this is going to be painful and extended, right? And you probably didn't think of that before you made this deal. And she's she literally pulls her collar back and shows her neck and goes, "Come suckle, boy." It's just
she's so badass.
It's dark, but it's also confident, but it's just savage. She's so smart, but also just really, really empowered. So I don't know, man. She's incredible. Jonathan Harker's character was incredible. I thought he was going to be terrible. I hate the Jonathan Harker character in every version of Dracula.
Yeah, they're pretty much. I mean, I'm a big Keanu Reeves fan.
Right.
I honestly don't bump on that one. And
right. But no, right. Exactly.
But this one was different. I'm glad they just ended him. You know what I'm saying? He's not that interesting. He's just a fucking lawyer who gets a little bit of land in London.
Right, but he's not that interesting. But the cool thing was, he discovered the secret to Dracula's castle that even Dracula doesn't know.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it because he's fantastically smart. He did it because he was desperate. Right?
Well, also, the one thing he says to Van Helsing and the person who was so clearly Nina from the beginning, was he did it because he had a kindness in his heart to help the other people who were asking for help, and then that led him to eventually just becoming that bald, ugly dude.
I honestly looked astonished, which was a great acting moment when they were like, "Wow, how did you even have the strength to go try to help people in prison in Dracula's castle when he was draining you at the same time?" He's like, "Who would have said no?"
Yeah,
he was just baffled. Are there any people that bad in the world? But they're all all of us are that bad. You're the only one but he was, that part was amazing, but it also led to the amazing. I'm starting to realize how much Silence of the Lambs is in this movie. Because the face swap that was a little bit corny, but the face swap that is amazing in Silence of the Lambs happens here too. But the way it happens here was incredible. And they set it up when he crawled out of the wolf, because he did the exact same thing when he crawled out of Harker, right? It looked the same. He was emerging out of the body, he emerged out of the wolf at the convent. But that led to that incredible line when Dracula's inside Jonathan Harker, like literally skinned him, and he's in his body, right? And because he has to be invited in, and he's tricking them into inviting him in. So Mina says, "I invite you in," to who she thinks is her fiance or husband. I can't remember if they're married at the point. And he steps through, and then she gets this weird vibe off of him, and she's like, "Look," she's like, "Let me look into your eyes, because there's something wrong with you. Let me look into your eyes." And he leans close to her, and he's like, "They're not my eyes." And you're like, "Oh God."
Yeah, she's like, "Why, your eyes are brown," or something like that. And you're like, "Oh." And even that effect looked really good of him ripping that skin off.
It totally looked. It was American Werewolf London transformation style.
It was so good. It was like what's that scene in the Poltergeist when they're in the mirror and the skin's falling off? That always grosses me out when people just rip their face off.
Well, that's why Raiders of the Lost Ark is so terrifying at the end of it. Right?
It's pretty nasty.
Yes.
No, everything was great, and I
well, not everything was great. The Room 9 thing was not great. The ending was not great. There were some wah-wah moments in sort of like some of the reveals. Like you said, the Mina trickery didn't work. It's funny because I feel like most of my flaws are in 1 and 2. And everyone's hating 3.
I will say I agree. Like the most, because even what's weird is like even the stuff that like I bumped on, it was like a little speed bump. Like it was nothing that really bothered me. But like episode 3, I just think was the best.
Well, I didn't like that Dracula texting freaking emojis or whatever.
I didn't mind that because, but no, they had their bases covered though. I mean, he drank the blood of the guy, and that guy knows how to text. And
remember when he ate the guy with the stutter and he temporarily had a stutter? That was amazing.
I loved his London flat. Isn't that what they call it over there?
Whatever it is, flat. It's like a mansion.
The colors of it were great though. Like he was sitting there, and it was like that purple.
Well, that was like Fright Night remake.
Yeah,
like
it was. Or even Fright Night 2. Fright Night 2.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is there's like the DNA of some of the best bits from all the old Draculas. It's like this Dracula flew out, watched all the other Draculas, ate them, right? And then tried to carry the best bits forward. Like this, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I really don't understand any hate for it at all. Like it truly baffles me.
I'm a little bit different after thinking it through out loud with you. I understand, but the problem is I shouldn't say this because it's going to come out totally the wrong way. But I actually feel a little bit bad for people who are so dead inside they can't enjoy this, right? Because you just have to be a little dead inside not to enjoy the verve and excellence. And even let's say, for example, that you hated the writing, you hated the modernization of it, you hated all those things, or like whatever. It's still got some of the greatest acting performances of the last few years in it. Right? I mean, there are so many bad horror productions, movie and TV both, that we have forgiven over the years because of amazing moments or performances, right? Like, I literally think that there are people who are tweeting they hate BBC Dracula who love Maximum Overdrive, right? Like, get the fuck out of here with this, right? Like,
I mean, like, is it a runtime issue? Like, do they look at it and they go, well, I can't watch an hour and a half movie without shitting my pants? Like, what's happening? That, like, this is so hard.
But, right? Like, and it's not like, you and I have had disagreements over some things that are, like, generally considered to be amazing. Like, I have a pretty healthy aversion to Frank Darabont's version of The Mist, right? I recognize it's excellent, and I've grown to respect it and like it more than I did the first time I watched it. But there's still things that I really don't like in it, but I forgive it or just look past it because there's so much great stuff in there that, like, whatever. And we do that all the time with whatever, and we've done that with so many horror properties. And then this one comes along, does this excellent job with it, and it's given none of that treatment at all. It's just bizarre. But I mean, there it is. We don't feel that way, clearly. So.
What do they think about Tom Cruise's Mummy?
Well, everyone, that's universal.
What do they think about Dracula Untold?
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone
seriously, this is one of, like, the better things.
And you know what's interesting is the only good moment in Dracula Untold is Charles Dance. I felt like his ancient vampire was was legitimately scary and kind of like very intense and kind of charming. He's only in it for like, I don't know. He shows up later, but the best part is in the beginning. And that vibe that's in that is in this too. It's weird. It's weird that this one like gives me like echoes of almost all the stuff I like in even where I did, even if I don't like the whole thing.
Right.
They're taking like the good stuff from the other thing. So I don't understand, but we don't need to argue with ghosts anymore. Like, cause the internet's not here. So we're done with that, but we love this. We think it's amazing. If you have not seen it,
I wanted to ask you something.
Try to go into it with an open mind and with your imagination open. Try, like we were just talking about Scorsese and Ebert. If you could watch something in a Scorsese or Ebert kind of mindset, right? Like
when you watch the picture. No, I want to ask you this. And then we can sign off.
Oh wait, I also have to give a shout out to what they did with the Quincy Morris character. Remember, so he's the cowboy in Coppola's Dracula, right?
Right.
And it was a big deal when he did it because no one had ever put that character in a Dracula adaptation. He's the American, and he gets dropped from everyone. And he's cool in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but this Quincy is a total asshole.
Yeah.
And that's kind of great. Like how they handled this guy was awesome. So.
I did like him.
Okay.
He was sort of, he cared about Lucy a little bit. So Dracula can get the information from people whose blood he drinks.
Yes.
You get one person in the world to drink their blood. Whose blood are you drinking?
To get all their
to get their power.
Well, it would have been Shakespeare. He's not. Does it work on dead things?
No, you can't get his blood. Yeah, because he's already dead. And plus, if you drink the blood of someone who's dying,
that's right.
You can't.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. The fact that he tried to eat a cancer patient and threw up. Dracula tried to eat a cancer patient and threw up because someone with terminal illness.
"Fuck cancer," and they're like, "Yeah, I got that bumper sticker too."
Because they literally said that Dracula was unlike the other undead who stayed primitive. Part of why Dracula became so smart and so like formidable was he was very selective about who he ate. He called himself a connoisseur. As a matter of fact, when there's one moment when someone visits his place in London, and I forget who it was, but maybe it's Lucy, and she brings a friend or whatever, and he goes, "Oh, you brought a bottle for the table. Thank you."
Oh, it might have been the lawyer, because that guy was a doofus. I loved him.
Oh, the lawyer Renfield was incredible too. That movie. Okay,
see, there's so much good shit.
I know we can't even stop talking about it because we keep remembering amazing things about it. All right, who would I? All right, you must have an answer already, so you go and I'll think about
definitely
it.
Don't. But I'm gonna think because like I want the blood of someone who Hulk Hogan. No.
Let me rephrase your question and see what you think of this version of that question. Who would you? Let's say you have Dracula's ability to do that. Who do you go for first? Not only, but just first, right? Because only means you got one shot at it, and it makes the hard question, like, oh God. But if you just go for who goes first. Because then I feel like there's the possibility that you just wish for more wishes in this scenario. You know who I do?
Martin Scorsese. Next episode. Okay, so this picture me in George of you right here. It's a heartfelt, it's a spellbinding film about children who are overcoming the odds in suburban Chicago.
What does it say about me that I'm just thinking I'm just gonna ambush and get like the first bank manager I see, so I know the codes to everything, like because you can move sequentially like Dracula was, step by step to like whatever. If you're only getting one though, wow.
Jeff Bezos.
No.
You get all the money you can buy.
Well, see, here's the thing though, because Dracula's he was just consuming information. He wasn't taking on the personalities of anybody.
That's true.
So that's a whole different thing. You're just basically trying to get information. I mean, the answer would be like a Stephen Hawking or something, right? Because you want to get the person who has the most information.
But like, also like you would want to get like, Tyson Fury or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Someone starts talking trash, you give them the hands. They're like, whoa.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. You'd want to get like a.
You got to find.
I don't know. It's a good question, but it's a great question for people to let us know on our Facebook page. So if you're listening to this, come tell us who's your only. You only get one. Let's change.
You
it
only
back.
get one.
You only get one. Who's your victim? Who you taking?
Put
down?
it on Facebook. Put it in an iTunes review.
That'd be hilarious.
And then let us know.
Steve Jobs would have been a good answer back in the day when he was left.
I don't know. Who's the smarty pants of 2020s? Like who's gonna
after
be...
Stephen Hawking went, it's pretty much Bill Gates basically. I think that's
probably the best.
That's probably the answer now. I did watch a documentary with him recently. He's still pretty formidable intellectually. So.
Was it that Netflix documentary?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one.
So he's pretty. Yeah, he's no slouch. He's not
actually, you know what? To
downhill.
be safe though, I would just take the blood of people around him. Like keep Bill Gates because obviously he's doing some good shit.
Yeah,
now.
good idea. Good.
And then just
oh yeah, you're right. There's implications of
like if
you take out,
like
right?
half of Africa's like not gonna, or China's not gonna get power in 2024. So like, because my ass wanted to get his blood.
You know, honestly, I find it's funny that you steered it that direction because I find like, you know, Christopher Nolan or those types really fascinating. It would be interesting to like. Can you imagine like eating Quentin Tarantino and you just see. Like I mean,
because then you go to the
just watched every movie ever made if you eat Quentin Tarantino.
But there's a downside.
You're attracted to feet?
Yeah, you go to the beach and you're just licking your lips. You just can't stop. You're just trying to enjoy.
No, he's in control. Remember, he's just taking.
Is he? I don't know what what's he doing right now, George. We don't fucking know.
That's a good point. All right. Anyway, if you watched it and hated it, give it another chance. If you haven't watched it, try
give it a chance.
If you watch it and loved it. But for different reasons that we have, tell us what those are. We're very interested. Don't try to eat us.
Yeah,
exactly.
Talk to you next time. Stay scary. Watch a bunch of horror movies. Bye, guys.